Hi, welcome to another edition of Design Spark Ask the Expert. Today we're joined by Andrew Ellis, who is a field application engineer at Phoenix Contact. We're going to be discussing the PLCnext series of industrial controllers. Andrew, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, so my name is Andrew Ellis. As Callum has already said, I am a field application engineer with Phoenix Contact UK. I have been for the last 13 months. Prior to that, I spent 20 years in the industry as a systems integrator and technical support for automation in the machine building and process engineering disciplines.
Fantastic. So you've got quite a background then to you.
Oh, yeah, I've been here, there and everywhere for doing automation, writing software, commissioning systems. So been there, done that, got the T-shirt, as they say.
Perfect. So Phoenix Contact, obviously they produce a wide range of industrial controls already. What prompted, as a company, what prompted you to make the PLCnext series of controllers?
I think it was mainly to do with the changing automation landscape. So customers are asking a lot more from their automation system. It's no longer just about control. There's a lot more focus on the data side of automation, the collection of data, the usage of data. And because of that, this has also led to the emergence of the IT side of the business also encroaching on the automation side of things. So now we've got to think about the networking, how all this data gets transferred from one place to the next, how to do that safely, and also the fact that the engineers who are involved in automation projects are not just automation engineers. We've now got data analysis. We've now got those engineers that are more familiar with the higher level languages like C++ and Python. So there's a lot of change in focus within the industry, and so PLCs need to change with that, really.
So it sounds like it's sort of everything's starting to merge. You've not got the discrete the separation between IT and then the operational side of it, where you've got your engineers, like PLC engineers, and everything. It sounds like it's all starting to come together as one now, really.
Yeah, so the idea behind PLCnext is that you don't need to have all these separate discrete systems, because part of the issue with engineering systems with discrete separate systems is, how do I get the two to talk to each other? How do I get my C++ or my Python engineers to interact with my automation engineers? Some of the functionality that customers are asking for their machines, for their process, cannot be done purely within the automation engineering software anymore. So what we looked to create was a PLC runtime that allows you to integrate the high-level languages into the real-time system. So rather than having them as two discrete sets of programs, you can merge them into a single program where the data is shared between your C++ program and your ladder logic program for your control. And also, to enable that, we have to open up our platform so that it is usable by the customer. So rather than it being a closed system, you have just Linux. So those people that are already familiar with Linux can use our system, create software as if it was as just a standard Linux platform, like a single board computer, and add it to the PLC hardware to create the system that they want. And one of the benefits of that is that you can then leverage all this extra engineering talent that is within an organization. Those people that have C++ capability can program in MATLAB Simulink, or work with open source software that is already available Linux. That can be leveraged and used within the PLCnext platform. And not just providing a platform, but providing an ecosystem that allows customers to work with PLCnext, not just broadly, but also securely, because people worry that if you open a platform, that they're going to lose out in security. So PLCnext has to still be secure as well.
So you mentioned obviously the security part of it there. It's a hot topic, really, is the cybersecurity thing. You hear about it all the time in the news. Big companies, the NHS, governments even, falling victim of like ransomware and things like that. What sort of features does the PLCnext ecosystem offer in security, and why is it so important for plant operators?
Well, to take that second point first, security is very important because there are lots of potential pitfalls if a system is not secure. I mean, the most obvious one is if you're running a machine or a plant, is any form of security breach could cause some downtime, and downtime costs money just in loss of production. But on the other side of that, there could be ransomware involved. So you're not just losing money on production, but then you have to spend more money to get your production restarted again. So, you know, there is, if nothing else, there is a monetary aspect to this. But there are other elements as well. Like, you could lose some data. If you're collecting all this data, you know, what you're going to do when it gets wiped or gets stolen. There's also your IP. So you've spent time and money to create this machine or create this process, and then somebody comes along and just rips off your program through a lack of security. And at the end of the day, all of that will cause reputational damage to the machine builder, to the end user, and nobody really wants that. So what you really need is a system that attempts to secure itself and is secure by design, so that, you know, we reduce the possibility of this happening. Now, nothing is 100% secure, but PLCnext is certified to the IEC 62443 security standard, which covers things like hardware production, software production, the product life cycle, the features within the product that allow you to at least create systems and standardize the system to that particular certification. We provide things like frequent updates to the firmware that can be added, a bit like a Windows update, essentially, to allow you to keep your system secure. And we also have a dedicated security response team. So any security vulnerabilities are announced and their patches are forwarded to customers. So we don't hide behind obscurity. We say we found this vulnerability and here's the fix, essentially. So we provide that as an added service to our customers who use PLCnext or any other Phoenix product that requires a security system.
Yeah, it's a case that you hear far too often that someone's been victim of a ransomware attack or some data has been stolen, whatever, because manufacturers and other like software manufacturers even don't publish updates to the product and people don't apply it. So it's great that you actually push out these updates. You make customers very aware of the fact that there is updates available with security fixes, patches, and all the rest of it in there, because a lot of the time you see things and it is down to outdated, insecure bits of software running now.
Yeah, and not just that, but we try and make it easy for customers to apply updates. So one of the added features that you can use with PLCnext is that there is a data and update manager. And the data and update manager can basically take a snapshot of your plant, tell you what versions all your PLCnext devices are running, and then you can automatically update all the devices at once, or you could schedule updates at different times depending on machine and plant downtime, but it can all be done through a central system rather than having to go to each individual device and update them manually. So it becomes far easier and far simpler to actually get an overview of what is running on your plant and then update where necessary. And that doesn't just include our firmware, that could also include the program that the PLCs are running and also the certificates that are in there for encryption and identification. Those are supposed to be updated on a regular basis as well, but a lot of people just put expiry dates that go off into the next 200 years because they don't want to spend the time and effort to keep their certification up to date. So we try and make it easier for customers to do that as well.
Yeah, because like lowering that barrier to entry of having a single pane of glass basically to look over everything really will encourage people to do it. The easier it is to do something, the more likely you are to do it.
Yeah, and the more we can do to help that, you know, just improves the product. All these extra features are there for security purposes and to make the engineers and the engineering teams' life easier.
So you mentioned previously as well in a previous comment, the whole PLCnext ecosystem. What other parts of the ecosystem exist? What does that ecosystem contain?
So as well as just providing a piece of hardware and some software for engineers to use, we actually provide a whole environment for engineers to gain further information and basically look for what they need. So we have such a thing as the PLCnext community. We have the PLCnext store as well, which is a central software repository. And we even use standard things that a lot of software engineers would be familiar with, like GitHub, to store example code and ideas for customers to use pre-made bits of software. So things that customers are already used to, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just providing that information in a central point.
So that's sort of the driving force behind why you create the community then, really, is the bringing together of everyone's knowledge. You get a lot better understanding it. It's easier for people to interact with it. It brings people together really well.
When we called it a community, we meant it essentially. It's not just somewhere for a Phoenix engineer to drop some information and then walk away. It's a place where we interact with our customers, we interact with the users of PLCnext, and the users of PLCnext can interact with each other. So there are places there for them to post all the different applications that they've done with PLCnext Engineer to provide ideas for how you can use this open platform. There's also areas where customers and users can say, how do I do this? And other people that may have already solved that problem can answer the question, essentially. So it's an ideas repository. It's very informal, but we also put all our training documents on there. All the information is found on the community. It's basically a one-stop shop information repository, but it's curated not just by Phoenix Contact, but by our users as well.
I know I've personally used, I've tried the PLCnext stuff before, and I tried the community as well, and I found that incredibly useful. The sort of melting pot of everyone's knowledge. You've got industrial engineers, you've got process engineers that do this. They've done it for years. They do it day in, day out. And then there's people like me where I've picked one up and gone, oh, this is really cool. I want to use this for a thing. And I don't know where to start with it. I found the community really helpful for that. So that did really help me. It's first-hand experience. It was really useful.
Well, next year, we're planning to leverage it even more. So next year, we're actually running a campaign where we want to actually give back to the PLCnext community and the worldwide community in general. So we're actually running a campaign called Beehive. And what we want to do is we want to leverage PLCnext to actually create and solve problems that beekeepers have with looking after bees, looking after beehives, and basically provide them with a software and hardware platform using the openness and using the community to create all these different solutions to all the problems that beekeepers and anybody that deals with the beekeeping industry have, essentially. And that will involve as many of our community members that want to get involved, essentially. And at the end of next year, we hope to have an intelligent beehive that solves a lot of these issues that beekeepers have through the power of the PLCnext community.
That sounds like a really good idea, because I mean, everyone knows about the crisis of the bees and everything, and overuse of pesticides that are causing problems. And bees do essentially keep us all alive by pollination of plants that feed us. Then, so that's a really good idea.
Yeah, no, it's a way for us to give back and to involve the community a bit more with PLCnext and projects maybe outside their original scope of where their companies work or where their interests lie. And it will just foster more engagement within the community.
Excellent. You mentioned the store. What kind of things are on the store, and what is the store itself as well? What is it?
Well, I mean, I think one of the main drivers behind the store is that we're all familiar with our mobile phones, essentially. We all just take for granted that we can, if we need a solution, we need a piece of something on our phone to help our day-to-day activities, we can generally go to the app stores that are there for our phones as part of their ecosystems and just download an app for that, or find the information that we need within the app ecosystem on our phone. So we wanted to do something similar with the PLCnext store. So the PLCnext store has a number of functions. One, it is a central repository to find all those libraries of pre-built functions that appear for PLCnext. So if you're creating your own software, there may already be functions available on the store. Another thing that you can find on the store is fully built apps. So in fact, what you can do is you can take an empty PLCnext controller, connect it to the store, and there may be a fully blown application on there, for example, controlling duty standby pumps, that you can just literally download off the store onto the controller, change the parameters to suit your application, and you've got a fully working system. And you can do that without actually having the engineering software on your PC. You can literally take the app, download it from the store, or you can find applications that run in parallel with your PLC code. So you can find applications that read code from your PLC code and send data up to a cloud service with a particular function. So you can get these apps that run in parallel as well. So on the one hand, it saves engineers time because they can reuse already verified apps in the store. But on the other hand, it also becomes another place where customers can actually commercialize their software. Customers could create their own applications, their own libraries, their own functions, and sell them through the PLCnext store. So not only do they use the software for their own benefit, but they actually make some extra money from selling their applications through the store or driving business to their servers for where they sell subscriptions and things like that. So it's an open selling model, an open commercial model that our customers can take advantage of as well.
It sounds like a really good thing, does that? The ability that other people, like other customers, users, whatever, can upload their applications as well sounds really good. Again, it's that whole sort of community aspect that you've got going on there. It's like the fact that, like you said there, you could have someone with a pump control that they've designed that they've then uploaded, and it instantly makes it a lot easier for everyone to use that same thing. It's from a central marketplace. It's really well integrated by the sounds of it. So yeah, it's like, why would you not use something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a place where customers can extend the functionality of their PLC beyond just being a controller. So if you wanted to add data logging functionality or connectivity to the edge or the cloud, you know, those applications already exist on the cloud. A lot of them might use some open source software or some pre-made software by another company, but it saves a lot of development time and a lot of integration time that applications could just be downloaded and installed just like you have on a mobile phone.
So you mentioned edge and cloud computing there. What is an edge device? If we were completely not in the know, what would you describe an edge device as being?
So an edge device, effectively, if you imagine that a lot of customers, as part of this drive to create more data, use more data, store more data, a lot of customers, first of all, they always look at the cloud. They always say, I want to get my data out onto the internet, out to the cloud, because I've heard of this thing called the cloud, and that's where I want to store and look at my data. But in some cases, the cloud is not always the best place. Customers don't realize how much bandwidth that's going to take up to move this data from their local site or their local machine to the cloud. The security implications of moving this data to the cloud, and the fact that once it's in the cloud, what do they do with it and how do they get it back and use it, for example? So an edge device is effectively taking that functionality that customers want to use on the cloud, but bringing it back to a local level. So it sits at that edge, for want of a better word, between the local network and the cloud network. And it's a local data store for data. It is a local system that not only stores the data, but visualizes the data and then works with the data to provide results that might then get used again locally within the process or the machine that generated the data in the first place. So there's a lot of advantages to actually handling your data on the edge rather than sending it all to the cloud. And luckily, PLCnext is well placed to handle that data because we have applications that customers can already use in the cloud, like databases and visualization software, dashboard software, that in fact can be run natively on the PLC hardware. So again, you're reducing the number of devices and the number of connections, which, you know, is important for speed, important for reducing latency and improving security. Because if everything's in one place and not being passed from point to point, there's less places where somebody can access that particular data as well.
I guess that whole thing of the security point there is as well, if you're not shipping it off to someone else's cloud, you've got full control over it. It's staying local. You can firewall off the device from any internet access at all. So it is, like you said, it is fully contained on your device that you own. It's your data sat there on your device. It's not going anywhere else. It's not vulnerable to someone else's systems being vulnerable to exploits and things like that. So
No,
Yeah.
it's useful, and it also means that for maybe smaller machines where it's not practical to have multiple devices doing all these different functions, the fact that you can run it all in a single device for that is a benefit. Also, a lot of customers, when they look to deploy edge systems, they go on the internet and find all this open source software. They'll find databases that are open source. They'll find visualization software such as Grafana that is open source. And one of the benefits of PLCnext is that we actually have a controller built specifically for edge functionality that comes with a lot of this open source software pre-installed. So even a customer buying something and getting out the box has not just a PLC, but an edge device with all the software that he needs and is already familiar with, that he could just then create his edge device for his machine or his process.
So you mentioned about the cloud computing aspect of it as well. What features does the PLCnext offer to get data up into the cloud? And obviously it's a hot topic. Everyone wants cloud connectivity, with Industry 4.0 being a big thing. Do Phoenix Contact also offer anything like a hosted cloud service?
So there are two aspects to cloud connectivity within PLCnext. One is that we are very flexible and open with how we connect to the cloud. So we provide, a lot of customers use and companies use MQTT as a method of pushing data out to the cloud, for example. So we have function blocks. So the automation engineer can write code in the PLC to push data out via MQTT. However, it might not be the automation engineer's role and responsibility to push data to the cloud. That might be done by somebody that's more familiar with higher level languages or open source software like Node-RED. So you can load Node-RED onto the same PLC, or you could write some code in C++ or C# or Python to push data out to the cloud and just access the global data space within the PLCnext controller. So in terms of how a customer gets his data out to the cloud, we're very flexible and we can support multiple different methods to get the data out. We also have things like an inbuilt OPC-UA server as well, so data can be passed to the cloud that way. So if a customer just wants, has the knowledge and the experience, he can do it all from first principles and use either the PLC or a third-party app or his own application to read data from the PLC and pass the data out to the cloud. Now, not all customers have this capability. They either don't have a big enough engineering team, or the cloud just seems like something that is for other people to implement. And for those customers, we also have what we call the Profi Cloud. So the Profi Cloud is Phoenix's hosted cloud service. Now, to get data from the PLC to the Profi Cloud is a two-step process. In the PLC, it's literally a process where you select the data that you want to be available in the Profi Cloud. You then go create an account in our Profi Cloud, attach the device to the cloud, and all that data is then available to be stored within the Profi Cloud. It's that simple, essentially. As long as the PLC has an internet connection, the data can be passed to the Profi Cloud. But as part of the Profi Cloud, we provide a number of different services that, not just for data handling, but also other services within the PLC. So, for example, when a device is connected to the Profi Cloud, you can actually see the status of the PLC. You can tell if it's running. You can tell if there are any errors. You can pull the log file. All that is available as a free service within the Profi Cloud. There's also services where you can attach power monitors or surge protection devices and monitor those through the Profi Cloud as well. We also have a data service where you can create your own dashboards and visualize the data within the Profi Cloud. You can even, from the beginning of next year, actually update the program running on the PLC by dropping it into Profi Cloud. So you can actually update both the firmware and the device software running in the PLC from the Profi Cloud. That again is a service that means an engineer doesn't actually have to leave his desk and go to site to update and fix problems within a system. And all that is handled securely through a pre-built pre-tested and pre-certified cloud server.
So that sounds ideal as well for things like system builders and integrators where you're going to be deploying a same system across multiple sites as well. And then you can monitor all them remotely, you can bring all the data back in without someone having to go around to each site and take readings or anything like that. You can do it all remotely. It's completely hands-off. That sounds really good. It sounds like a really good use case for it.
Not just that, but we've designed the Profit Cloud, and I hate to talk about it, but we've designed the pricing of the Profit Cloud to really suit automation. Because if people, I don't know if you've ever tried to create your own cloud server, but trying to actually work out how much it's going to cost you is an absolute nightmare, because you have to work out how much memory, how much data you're going to use, what sort of virtual PC you want to spin up, what services you want to use. And that means that trying to actually scale these sort of services are very difficult to quantify commercially. How much am I going to have to charge my customers for adding these extra services? So all we've done is we've made a very simple one-size-fits-all subscription model, so that you know how much it's going to cost and how much benefit against how much it's going to cost you and the end user, essentially. So by doing that, it makes it much easier for you to say how much it's going to cost per machine, per site, and it keeps the costs in check, essentially.
Yeah. So you mentioned just on the pricing thing there, is it priced per data point, or is it you get so many data points, you can upload so much data per month, or what kind of pricing structure?
Yeah, so basically we basically, for example, on the PLC data, it's you get 20 data points for free, so you can actually try before you buy any subscription. So you can connect a PLCnext controller to the cloud for free. You can read in 20 data points, create your own dashboards, check that it will do everything that you want to do. The device management service currently is free, so you can update firmware and check the status of the devices for free within the cloud. And then if you want to do more than that, if you want to, say, do 100 data points, we charge just a fixed fee per year, essentially. So if you say, I want 100 data points in my account, you get 100 data points, and you know how much that's going to cost you for a year's worth of data, essentially. We also offer user management for free, so you can add as many users as you like. You're not restricted on the number of users, nor the number of accounts or organizations that you need to create to segregate your devices within the organization. And then if you add some further Phoenix devices, like the power monitors, like the surge protection, they have their own yearly subscription models as well, and you just get charged per device on those particular systems.
So that makes it really easy to swallow when you have to take it to someone like your accounting department to say, we want to do this, here's what it's going to cost, rather than it being like, it might cost this much one month, it might cost this much another month. You can just say, it's going to cost us this much for a year. That makes it really easy to get other people on board with the idea of it as well.
It's all fixed cost. It's all, you know how much it's going to cost you for the year. You can divide that up between multiple end users and end customers, and it's just another way for the cloud service for the users to commercialize it and sell it on to their customers as well, essentially, or their customers to buy it directly. It's, there's multiple ways to handle it, and it just means that you're not having to guess from month to month that if I add 10 more machines, how much extra is that going to cost me in data or time or service levels and things like that. Everything is just a single fixed fee.
Excellent. I think that was a really good look into the PLCnext ecosystem. You've really showed off a lot of what it can do there. It feels like it can do an awful lot. It's definitely something that people should be playing with and having an explore with when it's really easy to get started with it as well. That seems like a really big thing. It's easy to get going with.
Yeah, I mean, I think summarizing all this is with PLCnext, yes, you have the functionality of a PLC and what you would expect from a PLC, but for all these extra features that are being asked for by machine builders and end customers, people are having to look to add extra devices to their system, whether it's for data capture, whether it's to add edge functionality, whether it's to pass data from existing systems and pass it up to the cloud, or get data into those IT systems like ERP systems or MES systems, manufacturing systems. Trying to get the data from one place to another is just proving more and more difficult. And a lot of PLCs just don't have the capability or the connectivity to get the data there. So having a PLC that allows customers that may have already built some software for a separate device actually be able to recompile that software and add it to the PLC saves time, saves money, saves points of failure, and generally just makes the system neater and more secure at the end of the day.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure to hear about the PLCnext ecosystem from yourself. Thank you for your time today.
No, thank you. It's been great. Thank you very much.